Go left. Right out there. You're almost. Yeah. Go for him. Go right of him. Decent cast. Come on. Come on. He's following it. He's on it. Oh! You twitched it one time. You should have just kept reeling it. Ah! God! He was on that thing. That was a good cast. He was on it. Welcome back to FlatsClass University. Captain C.A. Richardson here, and today we're going to ask the question, is your fishing line holding you back? Is it costing you opportunities? Well, today we're going to compare 3 of the more popular types of lines, and I'm talking not brands, I'm talking technical braid, traditional braid that has a lower cost, and even castable fluorocarbon. And we're going to break it all down right now. Let's go. Before we get into the breakdown on the first category, let's talk about the reason why are we comparing these lines. There are certain tactical advantages to leveraging traditional or more typical fishing braids, technical thinner fishing braids, and even, believe it or not, castable fluorocarbon line. That's right. All of them have a place in the right scenario. Now I'm going to talk about the brand that I'm the most familiar with. All you have to do is think in terms of, oh, well, for my brand, I would use this one. Okay? And we're all on the same page. Diamond Braid Gen 3, very popular braid, and it is affordable. That's one of the nicest things about traditional braids is they've brought the cost down so that everyone can afford them. And even though they're more expensive than monofilament line, which we rarely use anymore, they last so long that the cost per changing it out ratio makes this actually cheaper in the long run. Because I have very seldom found a reason once I put braid on a spool to change it. If you put traditional braid on a casting setup or a spinning setup, you can, until your line capacity starts to drain down from you changing all the time, it just looks kind of ratty and you think that it's not slick enough and you don't have as much casting distance and you want to, well, just change and have fresh braid. That's about the only reason. Let's talk about the reasons why traditional lines do so well, braided lines. This is an 8-strand braid. Very color fast, it holds the dye very well. And I have found these to be super tough and durable. So anytime I'm fishing for bigger predators, inshore grouper, tarpon, snook, bull redfish, jack crevalle, anything that I know has got some size, I'm using traditional braids. That's what I'm going to call the Diamond Gen 3. It's easier handling. You don't get nearly as many wind knots and mishaps when you're using this type of braid. There's a little bit more body to it. This is an 8-strand braid, but it still has a little bit more body to it. So it's a little easier off the casting rod. It's less likely to tip wrap on a spinning rod. So for me, those 2 reasons there give me, well, all the inclination I need to buy it. Better knot integrity. When you're tying a lot of these technical knots, whether they're Albertos or no-names, Albrights, FG knots, and they're traveling through the guide train of your rod, well, they take a beating going in and out and in and out, cast after cast, especially if you're an artificial angler. Well, the knot integrity stays up a lot better if you're using these traditional braids because of the body of that line. It's tough and it stays together for a long time. Perfect line anytime I'm fishing structure or cover. I fish a lot of marshy zones, a lot of submerged grass. I fish around oyster. And I'm not saying you're not going to get cut off if you're using braid. You definitely can get cut off using braid. But it has a lot of abrasion resistance. If I'm working mangrove shorelines, especially for bigger fish, working around docks, I'm tending to want to pick the rods up that have this type of braid. It just makes sense to me, and I have, in my opinion, a better chance of landing the fish. And then I said it earlier, it's affordable when you really look at it in the long run, other than those of you that are still buying maybe like Berkeley Trilene or old school Andy fishing line or something like that. If you're not using monofilament line has to be changed out on a very frequent basis. It gets stretched and it gets weakened when it gets stretched. It gets beat up by UV damage, and it absorbs water, which weakens it. Braid, none of that happens to it. Once you put it on, it's on. You've got it forever. It's really hard to argue the fact that this is a general purpose type of fishing line that is effective, and you can catch a lot of fish with it. All right, let's talk about technical braid. Let me clean this up. We'll be right back. I'm going to talk about, like I said earlier on the first one, something I know a lot about, and that's the Diamond Apex Microbraid. Now, these lines are thinner than their traditional Gen 3 counterparts for the same weight braid. They're just thinner. And they're coated differently as well. So they're a little slicker. They're thinner, they're slicker. And when you have thinner lines, more technical braids, what happens is the sensitivity goes through the roof. So if you can imagine two cans, the way we used to do when we were kids, I know the kids don't know this, and you could talk and the sound would travel down that line into the next steel can or tin can, and you could hear it. The thicker that line is, the harder it is for you to hear it on the other end. Well, that's why they came out with technical braids, because a lot of the finesse presentations, Ned rig fishing, those guys that ice fish and stuff like that, you couldn't detect bites as easy or feel bottom as well. You can do all of that with these. So let's hit the highlights for Diamond Apex Microbraid. You're going to get longer casts. Thinner braid, weighs less, is more aerodynamic when you make the cast, so you're going to be able to get much longer casts than traditional braids. It's for sure stealthier. When the line's laying on the water, it's not as visible to fish that see that line jumping when you're working a bait. Remember, braid floats. Braid rarely sinks unless you buy a sinking braid. So they see that pulse. And that thinner braid doesn't leave the signature. So it's definitely a stealthier braid. Better sensitivity, like I alluded to earlier. More line capacity. So if you have a shallow spooled, casting reel or something like that, instead of me putting 30-pound traditional braid on, I would put 30-pound micro on here, and it would instantly give me more line that I normally wouldn't have. It's kind of a nice advantage. Thinner lines, or technical braids, they sink faster with weight going through the water. They don't hang and lag back. There's not as much drag when they're moving a bait down to the bottom. So you've got that faster sink rate. For me, a lot of my technical fishing is done on spinning gear. So Ned rig fishing, or any smaller lures that I want to throw, like smaller hard baits or crankbaits or smaller spoons. I typically, if I need to get casting distance, if I throw them on traditional braid, they just won't go as far. They'll go a lot farther if casting distance matters with technical braid. And then you've got the fact that there are spooky fish out there. There are definitely spooky fish. If you fish in a pressured fishery and you need to stay off them, or you want that stealthier line, that line that doesn't leave a signature, that doesn't have any noise associated with it, when you take your thumbnail on less expensive traditional braids, it won't be the diamond stuff, and you rake your thumbnail down and you listen, you can feel the ridges on it, okay? The technical braids, no, you can't. They're slick. So naturally there's going to be some pitfalls to micro braids, and it depends on the brand that you are throwing what type of issues you're going to have, but they're not going to have the knot integrity that a traditional braid has. Microbraid, you're going to have to change the leader knot out a lot more often. That's just part of it because it's less material. Remember how I was telling you how it has to travel through the guide train, those technical knots, those Albertos, those Albrights, no-name knots, FG knots. Well, you can tie one on this stuff and throw it for an entire fishing tournament. But on Microbraid, you're going to use it for the day, and then when you go out the next time, you're going to retie that knot again because you have gone through the guide so many times. That material's thinner, so you got to think about that. And then there's the cost of Microbraid. Because Microbraid gives you a lot of these advantages and the way they have to manufacture it with the pick sizes being so small, it typically costs about 1/3 more. So expect that when you go to the retailer to pick it up. But if you've never tried it and you start fishing it, I guarantee you it's pretty addictive because the casting distance is amazing. It's just amazing. All right, one more to talk about, and it's one for you casting reel guys moreover than the spinning reel guys, but both apply, and it's becoming more and more popular in our sport. Let's talk about that next. Let's talk about the last comparison. And that is something that has really come on the scene in the last couple of years with the Inshore crowd. Now, this is something that's not new to you bass heads, but to the Inshore crowd, because of the renaissance with bait casters that has happened in the last couple of years, hopefully I've been a part of that, a lot of us have been playing around throwing castable fluorocarbon line, okay, 100% fluorocarbon line. It's a major advantage. I'm going to be straight up with you. Of all the lines that I throw, I like to throw this one the best. And that might be because of my situation. I live in a fishery that has very clear water and it sees a lot of angling pressure. So the fluorocarbon lines really play to a lot of the scenarios that I'm faced with. But let's just talk about what makes castable fluorocarbon line a benefit to you, okay? It's nearly invisible. There's no debating about it. If you see braid in the water and you see 100% fluorocarbon in the water, there's a huge difference. The fluorocarbon is not nearly as noticeable to fish in the water, for sure. It has a nice slow sink. And the reason that's important is lots of times lures don't operate right, especially lighter ones with braid, because the braid floats and kind of hangs in the water because there's a type of weight even on unweighted baits that have just a hook in them. And when you're moving them through the water, the braid kind of pulls them up or gets caught up in the wind and blows them around. You've seen it. You've made that cast and the wind just catches your bait and it just skips across the surface and your bait is taking a track that you didn't expect. Doesn't happen with fluorocarbon. You make that cast in that line, whether the wind's coming across or not, and it kind of tracks straight back to you. Big advantage. Easier line control for everything I just said, but as a casting reel guide, I'm more inclined to have fewer backlashes with fluorocarbon because it's thicker and it's stiffer, so it's not as limp, so it doesn't overrun as easy. Do you have to make an adjustment if you're a casting reel guy that's been throwing braid for a long time and you've done all this stuff to your reel to get it just right for braid, and now all of a sudden you're throwing fluorocarbon? Oh, this fluorocarbon, it feels so stiff, it's so stretchy, it's so this. But once you get it on a couple of reels and you start throwing it regularly, you're going to realize you can cast it a long way and you don't have those professional overruns nearly as much. All right, quieter presentations. There's no doubt when you take a monoline, fluorocarbon is just a very technical monoline, and you run your hand down it, it's slick, smooth, clear, it makes no noise, it's quiet, so it lands softer. When you pulse it, it's not shooting, it's not spraying water coming off it. No, it's quiet. It's the perfect line. To me, it's the perfect line. Clean, quiet presentations. Perfect for clear water anglers. If you're fishing in that fishery, even if it's got stained tannin water, you know, it's reddish, but it's clear. If you're fishing clear water, it's hard to argue that this isn't the best solution for fishing clear waters. Here on the Nature Coast, the water is as clear as the air between me and the camera lens right now. That's how clean it is here. So this is definitely an advantage here. Perfect for pressured fisheries too. If you're dealing with a lot of people fishing the same community holes, that fluorocarbon gives you an advantage. Believe it or not, skipping lures is much easier with fluorocarbon. Now I do it with like 17 and 20 pound weight fluorocarbon, but I mean, I love to skip docks. I love skipping mangrove trees, and I do it with braid. It works. And you might say, well, isn't this going to be a bigger problem with keeping the fish on by skipping in there because it's fluorocarbon and not braid? Believe it or not, because of its thickness, you do have that little bit of stretch and give, and the thickness of this where it doesn't bite into the wood roots or bite into a dock piling, that you can get it around, and in many cases it does better than braid does in those same situations. It's best on casting gear, but you can buy 6, 8, and 10 pound weights to throw to bonefish with small jigs and sight fish with spinning gear. You can definitely do it, and it's definitely an advantage for anyone who likes to sight fish. If you like to sight fish, it's going to be a big advantage fluorocarbon line. Best for plug fishermen. I love fishing plugs on this because when you get to the top of the water, one of the shortcomings to braid is if it's a big speckled trout, if it's juvenile tarpon, if it's snook, all of those fish come to the top of the water and ooh, they're violent head shakes. With no stretch with braid, oftentimes they can leverage that bait out of their mouth. This has just enough give that rarely happens. So you stay glued to those fish. Perfect for skittish fish. All in all, I mean, obviously it's better for those of you that like casting gear, but if you want to try something, are you going to have some drawbacks to fluorocarbon? I'm going to be straight up with it. You sure are. You're going to have a learning curve with it for sure because you've been braid guys for most of your life. You younger guys. And there's sometimes you got to stretch your fluorocarbon a little bit if it's been sitting in, you know, in a non-climate controlled environment where you're that guy that just leans it up in the garage and forgets about it and haven't used it in 90 days. Now you want to use it. You might have to, you know, clip it onto the dock or clip it onto your a tree or something like that and stretch the line a little bit before you go, and then just reel it up tight and you're ready. I mean, it only takes 30 seconds. But other than that, I mean, it really does. It's a pretty incredible product, and I feel you can get a lot out of it. Now, I want to draw a comparison with all three up here, almost like a little table. I think you're going to find it valuable. I made a quick little table here, and I will zoom in so that you guys can see it. We're going to kind of break it down for those of you that might be weekend warriors, or maybe another group might be avid anglers that get to fish an awful lot, tournament guys. And then those of you that might sight fish in clear water versus dirty water, you know, guys that like to do some skipping lures and things like that. So we're going to talk about it. Here's the feature list: casting distance, stealth, abrasion, sensitivity, line management, and best application for that line. And this column is traditional, this column is technical, and this column is fluorocarbon. So traditional, which was the Diamond Gen 3. For casting distance, it's good. It's good for casting distance. It has great casting distance. Technical, it's excellent. It's thinner. You know, it travels through the air easier. Fluoro, naturally, it's going to be the thickest of all these, so it's going to be fair. It's not going to be as long casting as the other two. So that's one category. Stealth, okay. What they see how you have to work it. Traditional is going to be poor. It's going to be fine for natural bait fishing, and you can fish with artificials. You just tie a long leader on here. But it's not, comparatively speaking, to technical braid, which is the micro braid. That's good. It is a lot stealthier, and naturally fluoro, because it's clear, is excellent. Abrasion resistance. Traditional, good. Pretty good. Technical, which would be the micro braid, fair. It's thin. Like I told you, you're going to have to retie knots often. And then, again, good for fluorocarbon because of the nature of the product is a little thicker. Sensitivity. Sensitivity with traditional is going to be high. It does telegraph feel through the line. But microbraid is going to be much higher. It's very high. And then fluorocarbon would be medium. That would be medium feel because the materials, again, it's thicker. Just like I said, it doesn't telegraph that feel as much. That's why I like it for plugs. I like it for moving baits. I don't like it for slackline presentations like I like braid. Line management, the ability to, manage tangles, wind knots, tip wraps, backlashes if you're a casting reel guy, or the way the water pulls in current or wind. With traditional, it's decent, okay? It's decent with your traditional braids, with your normal braid, your everyday all-purpose braid. Technical, it's tricky, okay? It's tricky. You got a lot of wind, you got a lot, if you got a lot of wind, this can get tricky. You can get some wind knots. It's a little tougher. I think we've done a great job with Diamond Apex Microbraid, and it is a lot easier for me to control. But a lot of those microbraids that are out on the market, those Japanese ones that are, you're paying those big dollars for, what is it, Blackwater, and there's a couple other ones. I used to have one at Daiwa called Samurai. They were so limp and so hard to deal with that I would get tip wrapped on almost every fourth cast. It drove me crazy in the wind. And then fluoro is the most controllable line. Because of the body of the line, it's just easier to control. You don't have nearly as many line management issues. Best application for all these. And this is basically what the video was about, was when to use them. I would say you can't go wrong with your traditional braids. I mean, you really can't. These things are fantastic. Diamond braid for me is kind of an all-purpose braid. That's why I wrote all-purpose. I use it for everything. It's on a lot of my reels, especially my reels that are larger reels. If I have 3000s and spinners and higher, they almost always have this. If I have, more finesse reels, 2Ks and 2500s, I'll put my micro braid on those. On the casting reels, depends on what I'm doing with them. If I need line capacity, 30-pound micro. If I need more pulling power, it's more about skipping. I'll put fluorocarbon, or I'll put traditional braid on there, and it's just easier to deal with. When I think of my micro braids, I really think about finesse. I think about Ned fishing. I think about working smaller plugs, smaller spoons. I think about I need more feel. I want to touch the bottom. I'm doing more semi-slack presentations, and I need to be able to feel the slightest tick. That's when I think technical braid is at its best. And then when do I use fluoro? Well, for me, I use it a lot because I'm here in clear water, and that's what I wrote. Clear water, this is the way to go. Skittish, super sketchy fish, definitely, this is the way to go. Hope you guys found this extremely helpful in making some decisions with your line, or maybe it just simplified it. It's like, hey, I'm a traditional braid guy. Because if you're a weekend warrior, traditional braid's probably going to be the one that you want. If you are a tournament angler, you fish these redfish tournaments, you fish the trout tournaments out in Texas, you're probably going to want to play with these two, technical and fluoro, a lot more. Those of you that like to skip docks, I'm going to tell you right now, if you've been using traditional braid to do that, try fluorocarbon. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have a lot more success skipping with fewer backlashes with fluorocarbon. Take it from someone who knows. I've backlashed a lot of reels. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Hopefully we earned a like and you'll smash that subscription button, and I'll have you back here tomorrow for another great fishing tip.